So this is the fourth item analysis. Ano pa tayo? Don't mind the QR codes, ha? They're not working. Naka-close yung Google Sheet. Hindi ko in-open. So closed yan. So let's begin. Number 1. In subgingival curettage of shallow supraalveolar periodontal pockets, the pocket depth is reduced by, so paano daw nagiging shallow yung pocket depth? The root planing procedure. Reduction of alveolar bone, thickening of cementum, new fibrillar attachment, long junctional epithelium attachment. What is your answer here? It's letter D, formation of your long junctional epithelium. That's the most common sequela of your periodontal therapy. Okay. So what happens is that, yeah. So after performing root planing procedure here, okay, once then out the cementum, then long junctional epithelium. So basically, humaba yung junctional epithelium, right? Number 2. The patient had a root canal treatment 2 years ago. The radiograph shows periapical radiolucency, but the tooth is asymptomatic. Okay. What will the dentist do? So, undergo ng RCTC patient 2 years ago. There's a periapical radiolucency. However, it is asymptomatic. Okay. Should you retreat? Should you extract? Okay. Should you open the area? Do nothing. Observe. Why? Why do nothing? Why observe? Very good. Most likely kasi that is an apical scar. So when you perform root canal treatment, okay, when you're performing root canal treatment, there are two things that can happen during. It's either bone would form again here in the apical area, or soft tissue would be forming here, which is known as your apical scar. Okay. What about your phoenix abscess? What is phoenix abscess? Phoenix abscess. I'm sure you've heard of phoenix abscess. So when you say phoenix abscess, let's say the patient would undergo root canal treatment. Root canal, okay? There's this periapical radiolucency here. Then the tooth is asymptomatic. It's not painful. Okay? Then during the procedure, diba, it's multiple sitting. Let's say 2 or 3 sitting. Okay? In between procedure, patient felt pain. Sumakit yung tooth, which originally it's not painful. Okay, so there's flare up on the area. Okay, so when there's flare up, it's painful. We call that your phoenix abscess. Or another possible scenario in phoenix abscess is that you did root canal treatment here, then you were able to finish the root canal treatment. However, after 3 months, patient would contact you complaining of pain on the said tooth. Okay, so one of the differential diagnoses then would be your phoenix abscess. What else can cause pain? Tapos na yung root canal treatment, it's painful. You can check for presence of fracture. And fracture yung tooth. Okay, so check for fracture also, which is not that visible in radiograph. So you can better check it through CBCT, right? Number three, the predominant microorganism in juvenile periodontitis is what? We mentioned yesterday, juvenile perio is in your 1989 classification. The equivalent of this one in 1999 is your aggressive periodontitis. Okay, so the predominant is correct. Letter B, Actinomycetum comitans. AA, Aggregatibacter. Okay, the previous name of your Aggregatibacter Actinomycetum comitans is your Actinobacillus Actinomycetum comitans. Okay, so aside for Actinomycetum comitans or Aggregatibacter, so we have AA. We also have Bacteroides or Cetus, and also your P. ginge, P. gingivalis. Okay. Of course, there are also others that would contribute in the disease. Number four, a device for fixation of mobile teeth after periodontal therapy. So periodontal therapy is finished. How would you fixate the mobile teeth? Will you put arch wire, acrylic, ligature, splint? Of course, you would be splinting the teeth. Why should you splint the teeth? What's your purpose of splinting the teeth? Why is it that if it's mobile, you need to splint the teeth? Anong reason mo? Decrease the mobility and what else? Stabilize, what else? Because if you splint the teeth, you are somehow distributing the forces, distributing the load, so that the forces to be received by this tooth would be distributed to the adjacent teeth as well. Okay, so you need to splint. So same thing for your occlusal trauma, secondary occlusal trauma. You need to splint. Still remember the difference between primary occlusal trauma and secondary occlusal trauma. Okay, let's review your primary and secondary occlusal trauma. Which one would have a healthy periodontium? Primary or secondary? Healthy periodontium. Number one would have a healthy periodontium. Number two would have a reduced periodontium. What about the forces? Which one would receive normal forces and which one would be receiving excessive forces? Which one would receive excessive forces? Is it primary or secondary? So this one, healthy periodontium, of course, this would receive excessive forces like what? Bruxism. What else? Premature contacts. Okay, but in secondary occlusal trauma, normal forces. Okay, that is because if this is your tooth, originally the bone support is here, right? But we mentioned it has a reduced periodontium already. So patient had periodontitis before it was treated and the bone support of the tooth is in here. So reduced periodontium. Okay. So even though the teeth would be receiving normal forces, normal occlusal forces, this tooth would be perceiving this as an excessive force because of the reduced periodontium. Okay, so that's the difference between primary occlusal trauma from secondary occlusal trauma. Number five, a metabolic disease which predispose an individual to periodontal disease. But you know this one, you've been studying this, diba? For several years. Again, na mention yan. So this is diabetes mellitus. Okay, So diabetes mellitus is considered both as a risk and modifying factor. Okay. What's the difference between risk from modifying factor? When you say risk factor, it increases the chances of you having the disease, having the periodontal disease. When you say modifying factor, okay, it hastens the disease process. Okay. So if in a patient, okay, in a patient, diabetes mellitus is present, however, patient has no periodontitis yet, diabetes here would serve as a risk factor. But in a patient who has diabetes mellitus and also periodontitis, diabetes now acts as a modifying factor. So it's the presence or absence of the disease that would dictate whether it would be classified as risk factor or modifying factor. Same with your smoking. Diba? The patient is smoking. The patient has no periodontitis. The patient has an increased chance to have periodontitis, but it does not automatically mean that in few years time now, patient would develop perio. Increased chance lang tayo. But if the patient has, or if the patient is smoking and the patient has periodontitis, okay, what would happen now to the periodontitis? It would worsen. Okay, so diabetes mellitus and smoking are both considered as modifiable risk factor. Meaning to say, if the patient stops smoking, then it's not a risk factor anymore. If the patient was able to control the was able to control blood sugar, then it's not a risk factor anymore. All right. Another thing that you need to recall in terms of diabetes mellitus are the cells. Okay. What are the cells that are found in the islets of Langerhans, the pancreas? Okay. We have your alpha cells, beta cells, and your delta cells. So alpha, beta, and delta. Okay. Which one among these three would produce your insulin? Alin yung nagpo-produce ng insulin? Is it alpha, beta, delta? Beta insulin. Your alpha cells would be producing your glucagon. And your delta cells would be producing your somatostatin. Okay. Basically, your glucagon would what? Increase or decrease the blood sugar? Glucagon, increase or decrease? Increase. Tama. Increases the blood sugar. Okay. For your beta cells, the insulin would be decreasing the blood sugar. It lowers the blood sugar. Okay. And somatostatin, okay. Basically, it's a universal on and off switch. So it inhibits the release of various hormones, including the insulin and glucagon. Okay. Inhibits release of hormones such as insulin and glucagon. Knowing this, a hypoglycemic patient would have what level of insulin in the blood? Increased or decreased insulin level? Mataas ba yung insulin sa hypoglycemic patient or mababa? Look at what glucagon does, what insulin does. So in a hypoglycemic patient, the insulin level is increase. Increase. Ano ba increase? Yeah. The insulin level is increased. So You should not give insulin in a patient who is hypoglycemic because you would further decrease the blood sugar of the you would further increase the insulin level. You would further decrease the blood sugar. So what the patient needs is instead glucagon. Okay? When should we give glucagon in a hypoglycemic patient? Kailan siya binibigyan ng glucagon? Let's say you're performing your odontectomy case. Okay? With hypoglycemia patient, would you give glucagon? Good. Very good. For unconscious patient. So you check your patient first. Unconscious. Wait lang ha. Tumigil ni Siri. Ayun. What would happen to the check your patient first, unconscious or conscious. If conscious, then sugary drinks. Okay? Better if liquid form, hindi candy. Okay? Sisip-sipin pa ni patient. Yun, namamatay na nga si patient. Okay? So, soft drinks. Okay? Then, if unconscious, glucagon. Right? Among the other choices, we have here syphilis. As you already know, syphilis is caused by a spirochete, which is your Treponema pallidum. Okay? Treponema pallidum. It is sexually transmitted disease, STD. So anemia naman would result in poor tissue oxygenation. Okay? By RBC, the patient. Addison's disease, on the other hand, is a chronic disorder wherein the adrenal glands do not produce enough cortisol. Okay? The adrenal gland does not produce enough cortisol. What is cortisol? What is cortisol? What do you know about cortisol? Cortisol is a stress hormone. Stress hormone. Okay? So patients with Addison's disease would have skin bronzing. Okay? That's the first initial sign of Addison's disease. Skin bronzing. Okay? Gums would also be pigmented. There's intraoral pigmentation. Okay? Number 6. Most important diagnostic feature in periodontal disease. Halitosis, gingival enlargement, pocket formation, recession of gingiva. Perio. Diagnostic feature ng perio. You're sure na it's perio if you see that. Is it halitosis? Halitosis kasi is bad breath. Recession of the gingiva can be caused by is most commonly caused by toothbrushing trauma, di ba? Not necessarily perio. So it does not follow that there's recession, there is periodontitis. So this one, pocket formation. There's pocket formation. If, let's say, pocket formation is not in the choices, what else can you look for? Okay, you can try to check for apical migration of the junctional epithelium. Okay, sometimes this is the one being used. So again, halitosis is bad breath. Okay, I already know that. Gingival enlargement. So gingival enlargement, the difference between gingivitis is that its color is the same as the surrounding mucosa. Okay. And also, it's negative to bleeding on probing. That's why patients with gingival enlargement, management would be gingivectomy. Okay, gingivectomy. It's a management. Number 7, ay hindi pa pala. Types of pockets daw. Na-discuss na natin to yesterday. Okay? I have discussed this yesterday already. Number 7, patient came into the clinic complaining pain on the gum. Ito yung gums ni patient. Patient has fever and upon oral examination, patient has a thick linear bleeding, edematous interdental papilla, and rolled marginal gingiva. Also punched out papilla. Okay? There's also a fetid smell. So, what's your answer here? That's your keyword though. Nasa na? Punch out papilla. Diba? Punch out papilla and fetid smell. So, necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis. Okay? And we have discussed the difference between necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, periodontitis, and stomatitis yesterday. Okay? All of which would have no pocket formation. There's no pocket formation for all because the papilla or the gingiva has already been necrosed. Okay? Skip this. In terms of the management, you need to give antibiotic to your patient, specifically your metronidazole. Okay? That's a management. Amoxicillin, okay? Or a combination drug. Ano pa naman ito? Yeah, number 8. For number 8, what instrument is used for removal of plaque on mandibular anterior teeth? Lower anterior, 5-6, 11-12, 2R2L, 4R4L. Dalawa yung possible answer. Diba? Dalawa yung possible answer here. So what's your answer? Sana naman yung choice nyo is A or C. Okay? May problem tayo pag B or D. Okay? Dalawa na yung possible answer there. So there are two possible answers there. I don't know how you would be approaching such questions because when you take the board exams, there are times wherein questions like this would come up. And of course, you cannot ask the proctor. Okay? You cannot ask your proctor because your proctor is not a dentist. He's just a teacher siya, just a school. Okay? So the board exam will not stop. Okay? So universal daw is letter C. Hindi kasi na-mention if it's Gracie or universal. So treatment used for removal of plaque. So it's either A or C. Okay? A or C. Ano ba sinagot ko? C yung sinagot ko because it's specific. I answered C because it is specific. Because for Gracie, you can have 1, 2, and 3, 4 for anterior also. Diba? So this one, 2R2L, is just for anterior. It's not used for premolar. Okay? Anyway. So we have the curette. Okay? You already know this one, curette. Okay? So your Gracie curette is already pre-angulated at 60 to 70 degrees. Okay? Have a pre-angulation here at 60 to 70 degrees. So universal, 2R2L, 4R4L, you already know that. The Gracie, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. I'm sure you're very familiar with those different curettes. Okay. Number 9, antibiotic for patients with aggressive perio. This one's also easy. The answer would be metronidazole, letter C. Okay, metronidazole. And again, this is in 1999 classification, aggressive. So for aggressive, we need to give antibiotic based on the 1999 classification. So it's either you use this combination drug, amoxicillin and metronidazole, or can you do metronidazole and ciprofloxacin? That is what they would be recommending. Okay, metronidazole is bactericidal. Okay, metronidazole is bactericidal, right? Clindamycin is also an antibiotic. Okay, it's also bacteriostatic, but in high doses, it becomes bactericidal. So static, but in higher doses, it becomes cidal. Okay. Azithromycin, is it an antibiotic also? Yes, di ba? Azithromycin is also an antibiotic. Azithromycin is bacteriostatic. Okay? It's bacteriostatic in nature. So it is effective against anaerobic and gram-negative bacilli. Pantoprazole. Pantoprazole. Is that an antibiotic? So earlier, metronidazole. Ito, pantoprazole. Is that also an antibiotic? Look at the suffix. The suffix ends in prazole. Ano ba? Ayan, prazole. Can you think of other drugs that would end in prazole? Alam niyo yan. Omeprazole. Very good. Omeprazole. Omeprazole. Esomeprazole. So, when do you take omeprazole? When is it given? It's a GERD. Very good. It's a GERD. Okay, so these are acid-lowering medications. Acid-lowering medications. So, pantoprazole is used to treat GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disease. Okay, so be familiar with the different suffix. That's just like in your antihypertensive drugs, diba? Ends in pril or lol, diba? Number 10. The perio chip is small, orange-brown rectangular chip, rounded at one end for insertion into periodontal pockets as a local drug delivery agent. It contains glycerin and purified chip. What is the active ingredients of perio chip? The active ingredient. Ay, naka-highlight na siya. Naka-highlight na pala siya. Chlorhexidine gluconate. Okay? The answer here is letter C, chlorhexidine gluconate. So basically, this is one of the local delivery agent that is available. Okay? Perio chip. So when you say local delivery agent, you are administering the medication directly on the pocket. Insert mo in the pocket. Okay? You're putting it in the pocket just like this one. Yeah. You would be inserting your perio chip here and you will be leaving it there, and it would be bioabsorbed eventually. There are other available local delivery agents, such as your, so it degrades in 7 to 10 days, huh? Such as your tetracycline containing fibers. Okay? So these are not commercially available anymore. Okay? So it's impregnated with tetracycline. You leave it there. Yeah. You pack it there into the sulcus. Next, we have subgingival doxycycline. So doxycycline is a type of your tetracycline also. The syringe, common brand that is used is your Atridox. Be familiar with these different brands. Huh? Atridox, subgingival doxycycline. We also have subgingival minocycline. Common brand naman is your Aristine. There was a time na board exam, sabi nila after the exam, Dok, may Aristine, hindi mo tinuro. Ayun, oo, nakalagay there, Aristine. Okay? Baka overlook nila. So, Aristine in the exam daw. So, minocycline. Okay? Nawala ba? Hindi. Yeah. So, keep in mind that these drugs here, you are not injecting into the gingiva. You're just delivering it into the sulcus. Okay? Sa sulcus lang yan, ha? Do not inject into the gingiva. Right? You also have this one, subgingival metronidazole. Okay? It's also available. Ito. Nasya ko na yan kanina. Number 11. The type of periodontitis when less than 30% of the site assessed in the mouth demonstrate attachment and bone loss is less than 30% of the sites. Slight or mild, localized, generalized, moderate. It's letter D. Localized. Do not use the term slight. Huh? Slight perio. Slight perio. Localized perio. Generalized perio. Okay? Number 12. Hindi ko pala. Ano to? For chronic perio and aggressive perio, I have explained this yesterday already in detail, including the computation, if it's localized or generalized, the extent of periodontitis. Okay? Ay, wait lang. Number 12. The following are reasons for placing a surgical dressing after a gingivectomy, except 2. So period dressing, all of which are indication, which is not an indication. Prevent hemorrhage, accelerate the healing, retard the plaque accumulation, hasten inflammation. Parang dalawang answer dito. Wait lang ha, basahin ko lang ulit. Except what's your answer? So I answered here letter D. Hasten inflammation, but possible din si accelerate healing. Okay? Because it does not accelerate healing. But it does not speed up the inflammation. When you say hasten, kasi it speeds up something. So speeds up the inflammation. The same course of inflammatory response. Peak of inflammation is at 3 days. Okay? Mini mo na lang kayo pag ganyan. Okay? So these are the functions of your periodontal dressing. To obtain and maintain a close adaptation of the mucosal flaps, protect the wound created during surgery. Okay? For comfort of the patient, prevent post-op bleeding, prevent formation of excessive granulation tissue. Okay? So those are the functions of your periodontal dressing. All are in your handouts. Which of these is not a diagnostic feature of occlusal trauma? Which is not a feature of occlusal trauma? What's your answer here? Widening of PDL, increased tooth mobility, periodontal pocket formation, loss of alveolar bone. The answer would be letter C, of course. Periodontal pocket formation. It's not a feature of your occlusal trauma. It's a feature of your periodontitis. Keep in mind that trauma from occlusion can happen or can occur on a healthy patient and can also occur on a patient with periodontitis. So a patient can have periodontitis and at the same time trauma from occlusion. Okay? So these are the features of trauma from occlusion: tooth mobility, migration, tooth pain, radiographic changes. Okay? So for the radiographic changes, there's the funneling of the crestal bone. Okay? Funneling. 14. In normal gingiva, the resident microbial population are normal gingiva. Of course, more predominant C, gram. All are present naman, di ba? But more predominant are the gram positive aerobic microorganism. Okay? Gram positive aerobic microorganism. So throughout life, oral cavity is always colonized with bacteria. Okay? So 300 to 400 bacterial species at any given time, around 150 different species are present in one person. So basically, it is not only the increase in the number of bacteria that causes the periodontal disease, but also the shift in the bacterial flora, the predominant microorganism. Okay, it's not just the presence of bacteria, but also the shift in the oral microflora. So as plaque matures, as plaque matures, the there would be a shift in the environment from gram positive to gram negative. So I want you to be familiar with these different bacteria present in a healthy gingiva, gingivitis, and periodontitis. So for a healthy gingiva, it says here that the microbiota is mostly gram positive streptococci and with 15% gram negative rad species. So basically, these are the bacteria found on a healthy gingiva: Streptococcus, okay, Actinomyces, and others. Next, we have microbial composition associated with gingivitis. So there's inflammation already. So look at the percentage. It has already increased yung gram negative microorganisms. Okay, so these are the bacteria present now. You have your Actinobacillus already, okay, and others. Then the microbial composition associated with periodontitis. So for this one, there's an increase in the total microbial load. Occasionally, bacterial species are either introduced, overgrow, or exhibit new properties. Okay, and asan yung bacteria? These are the bacteria present, okay, or periodontitis. Look at the first three: P. gingivalis, Actinobacillus, Actinomycetum comitans serotype B, Bacteroides furcitus, among others. All right? Ito yung star do sa lahat. P. gingi, AA, and Tannerella forsythia or your Bacteroides furcitus. Okay? So again, Actinobacillus actinomycetum comitans is also your Actinobacillus, sorry. It's also your Aggregatibacter actinomycetum comitans. So you need to know the other names, okay? Bacteroides furcitus is also your Tannerella forsythia. Okay? You wouldn't know kasi in the board exam what they would be using. Is the new name or the old name of the bacteria. So be familiar with both. Okay. Next we have here number 15. Which of the following species of Streptococci is usually not found in the human dental plaque? Which is not found in the dental plaque? S. mutans, S. pyogenes, S. sanguis, S. salivarius. I'm sure you can guess this one. It is not found in the dental plaque. S. mutans. Have you been hearing S. mutans on your lectures? That is sa other subjects. Na-mention naman si S. mutans. S. salivarius. You think we have S. salivarius? Again, question mark. S. sanguis. Have you been hearing S. sanguis? Just earlier, we've discussed S. sanguis, di ba? S. sanguinis. Di ba? Na-mention natin S. sanguinis. What did we mention about S. sanguinis earlier? This is the early colonizer. This is the initial colonizer in the plaque, sa blood, di ba? So meaning to say, it is also included. You can find this, di ba? S. pyogenes. Tama ba si S. pyogenes? So you're choosing between S. pyogenes and S. salivarius. Which one would you answer now? So you would be guessing now. So you're taking the board exam. Ano sa dalawa? S. pyogenes, S. salivarius. What would you answer? The answer would be S. pyogenes. S. pyogenes is primarily a human pathogen responsible for conditions like ano ba? Strep throat, scarlet fever, and skin infection. Okay? May sore throat ka, scarlet fever, skin infection, S. pyogene, but not in the human dental plaque. Okay? S. mutans, the answer is S. pyogenes. S. mutans is one of the primary component of dental plaque. It's the major contributor into what? Tooth decay, caries formation, di ba? S. mutans. Major contributor to caries formation. Okay. S. sanguinis, sabi natin, this is the pioneer. Okay. One of the early colonizers. One of the early bacteria that would be attaching to your, what do you call this? Pellicle. Okay. So S. salivarius, while it is more commonly found on the dorsal surface of the tongue and saliva, it's still considered a resident in the oral streptococcus. Okay, so it can be detected in various parts of our oral cavity, which would include also the dental plaque. So S. salivarius is included. Okay, S. pyogenes is not included. Right? Number 16. Break na daw. Continue ko hanggang 20 ha, para I can discuss item analysis 5. Okay? So number 16, the most important plaque retention factor is, this one's very easy. Most important plaque retention factor. Most common. All of us would have this, calculus. So calculus. So when you say predisposing factor, these are plaque retentive factors. So we already have predisposing. We have a risk factor. We have modifying factor. Okay? So you need to know the difference between these three terms: risk, modifying, and predisposing factors. Okay? We have a lot of predisposing factors in the oral cavity. We have the calculus. We have here, oops. We have here calculus, dental appliances, overhanging restorations, crowding is also plaque retentive, high frenal attachment, and inflammation because of the increase in the size of the gingiva. There would be a lot of undercuts now. Okay. So predisposing factor, naturally occurring, and iatrogenic. When you say iatrogenic, it's the dental that cause the plaque retentive area. Okay. So naturally occurring, you have your deep developmental groove, irregularities on tooth surface, enamel pearls, calcular deposits, tooth malposition, deepened sulcus. All right. Skip this. We've discussed this already. That's why I'm skipping. So in terms of iatrogenic predisposing factors, you have here your overhanging dental restoration. Okay. Next, we have oral appliances fabricated by the dentist. How would you check for overhanging restorations? What should you do for you to be able to detect if the restoration that you place has overhangs? Ano pang check? You did class 2. You want to check if there's overhangs, approximate. So you can use your dental floss. What else? Take radiograph. What's the best radiograph that you can take? What projection? Bite wing radiograph to detect for overhanging dental restoration. Just like this one. Okay. Next is so sutures are also plaque retentive. Number 17. White soft deposit around the cervical areas of the teeth. White soft deposit around the cervical areas of the teeth. Because it's a specific na, confusing. So you would, sana naman walang answer ng D. May nag-answer ng D. May nagtatangkang sumagot ng D. So it says there's soft. So it should not be D because calculus is calcified. Okay, it's hard. I answered here letter C, materia alba. Materia alba. Okay? Pero, possible din si A. However, I think more appropriate is letter C, materia alba. It's more appropriate. Okay? Because if you define materia alba, you would not mention naman, if they would be asking this question, they would not be including naman siguro no organized matrix, di ba? So I think it's materia alba. Okay. Anyway, so food debris materia alba we have discussed already earlier and yesterday also. Which group of periodontal fibers first to offer resistance to movement of the tooth in an occlusal direction? Resistant resistance to movement in an occlusal direction. So which among those different fibers? The answer would be letter. No. What's your answer? What did you answer? When you say resistance to vertical movement, it's resistance to what happened? What would happen if the tooth was moved in an occlusal direction? Luxation. Which would resist luxation among these different fibers? So it's letter A, apical fibers. So you have to analyze the question also. Okay? So resistance to movement of the tooth in an occlusal direction. So resistance to luxation, and that is the function of your apical fiber. Okay? Apical fibers would prevent tooth tipping, resists luxation, okay, and protection of the neurovascular supply to the tooth. That's the function of your apical fiber. Okay, I think I have discussed that yesterday. Number 19. Overhanging amalgam fillings has significant role in contributing to chronic periodontal disease because so overhang. Role ng overhang. Of course, it is plaque retentive. Plaque retentive. Plaque retaining area. Okay, it's like that. Plaque retentive. So number 20, saliva has an important role in the maintenance of oral health. Calcareous deposits may be frequently found in areas away from the salivary ducts. So we have two statements here. So what's your answer? You have two statements. Saliva has an important role in the maintenance of oral health. Is that true or false? Calcareous deposits are frequently found in areas away from the salivary ducts. Is that true or false? Analyze natin. First sentence. Is it true or false? First statement. True. Second statement. Calcareous deposits are frequently found in areas away from the salivary ducts. Is that true or false? False daw. Why false? Kasi calcareous deposits would form on areas where the ducts would drain, di ba? Ano natin, buccal of upper molars and lower of lingual anterior. Okay? So there would be accumulation of calcareous deposits there because of the presence of saliva. So having said that, calcareous deposits po calcified from plaque would be calcified. Plaque would be calcified by the saliva. So nagko-cause siya ng calcification. Nagiging calculus siya. Tama. Okay? So you have minerals in the saliva that would cause calcification of your calcification of your plaque. Okay? At the same time, that's why they are not virulent enough anymore, okay, to cause the disease. So the answer would be letter A. The first statement is true. Tama, di ba? Both statement are mali. Both statement are false, hindi rin. First statement is false, mali rin. So letter A, the first statement is true. Okay? So we'll stop here. We'll have a 15-minute break, then we'll continue. Okay? Para we can finish around 3 or 3:15. Okay? We'll be back by 2:17. 2:17.